Bonjour tout le monde! Welcome back to We in France. I'm Diane, and thank you for being here. Now tell me, are you planning a trip to Paris or maybe another region of France? Well, you're definitely excited to immerse yourself in French culture, I'm sure. Keep in mind there are certain customs and behaviors that might raise some eyebrows amongst the locals here in France. I see it every time I visit a touristy area, and make no mistake about it, cultural differences are definitely real. So I want to get right into 11 such things that you should avoid doing if you want to avoid getting strange looks from the French. You want to blend in seamlessly, or at the very least, you want to make a good impression and at least not draw negative attention to yourself. So stick around till the end. I want to keep this intro short. I'm going to give you more context just about where I'm coming from with this video, but we're going to get right into it with number one, and that is avoid asking for a lot of ice with your drinks. You'll notice in France that drinks, mostly non-alcoholic ones like water, soda, that sort of thing, they're generally not served with much ice, if at all. And if you ask for une carafe d'eau, tap water, it'll be served at room temperature or chilled, maybe, with some empty glasses, no ice. Now, if you'd like a full glass of ice with your drink, definitely be sure to ask because it's not the norm. And I have to say, I was just at the movies the other day. I wanted to get a fountain soda and I asked ahead of time, does it come with ice? Do you have ice? And they were like, no. So for me, it's no fun without the ice. I didn't end up getting a soda, but that's just something you want to look out for. If you do ask for ice, it might be a little unusual. It's not anything that's going to get you in trouble with the French, but it's just something to be aware of that it might be a little unusual. All right, number two, this one is hugely important. It's not saying bonjour or hello. And this one's so important, I have a video coming soon on the importance of saying this magic word in France. Just know that before starting any interaction in French, such as entering a waiting room, an elevator, that sort of thing, or any person that you're going to buy something from or ask a question to, it's the norm to greet the person with a bonjour before asking for directions. Like I said, ordering food, that sort of thing. It's a necessary and polite greeting that literally says, hello, I see you, fellow human being, and I'm acknowledging your presence first and foremost. And it goes without saying that, of course, not everyone in the US is rude and short or forgets polite greetings. That's not what I'm saying at all. Many Americans were raised to be super polite and address others politely, so I get that. But the difference is that in the US, it's not a social norm across the board everywhere to always say hello, thank you, and goodbye every single time. You can definitely get away with less, like ordering something at the deli. Half pound of yellow American cheese, please. And that's fine. You don't need to say, hello, may I please have, all of that. And while it's not the most polite thing in the US, I think it's more accepted to be a little less polite in social interactions and just say to a waiter, I'll have the steak, please. Or I'll have the steak, thanks. Instead of hello, I'll have the steak, please. Thank you, like you hear in France. That's the major difference between the bonjour meaning in French and how we use hello in English. In France, saying bonjour is a sign of respect and a cultural norm, and it's really not optional to forego the greeting if you want people to know that you understand French manners, French norms. Who cares if you butcher it, if you say bonjour, bonjour, if you can't quite get out the bonjour, whatever you say, just say it. All right, number three, speaking loudly in public, especially at restaurants. Now, Americans are far from the only nationality who tend to speak more loudly than the French do in public. I get that. But we seem to have a knack for making ourselves known. And again, not every American speaks loudly. I'm not saying that either. But I think it's fair to say that our level of normal public conversation might skew a little bit louder than the French. So just a rule of thumb, if you're speaking at a volume that allows a table across the room to hear you pretty much word for word, I would say just keep your voice down or at least be aware of the volume. I found the French to be a little bit more discreet. They tend to keep their voices down a bit more than we might be used to stateside. So just be aware of that when you're doing touristy things, when you're eating out and all of that. All right, number four, chatting up a stranger in line or asking personal questions is part of small talk. Now, small talk with strangers, it's a bit less commonplace in France than the US, and it doesn't really get as personal. It's important to recognize this difference that I've talked about at length between public and private spheres in France. Now, it's not that the French don't care about you or that they're not friendly, they're not curious. It's not that. It's that they're being respectful of your personal life, and the context here is everything. I want to stress that. It's very nuanced, and it's something that honestly probably took me close to a decade here to fully understand. And I go into this one in more depth in a video I did on small talk that I'll put up here or here. Just click on that card that pops up, okay? All right, number five, approaching someone in English. Now, Absolutely no one expects tourists to speak perfect French, but learning a handful of words and or basic phrases, that's going to go a very long way toward how you're perceived, just using these basic words and phrases. Now, I've definitely seen tourists of all nationalities approach bakery employees directly by saying hello in English, and they proceed to order in English with no acknowledgement that we're in France, and starting here with the bonjour, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that's the least we could do. And I think it's a little presumptuous, let's say, to assume that someone's going to speak English automatically without even greeting someone with a simple bonjour. Everyone knows that word. And yes, a lot of French people do speak English in a touristy capacity, enough at least to do their job, but I don't feel like it should be taken for granted. Always start with that bonjour, maybe even a do you speak English, parlez-vous anglais? You know, and I share all types of phrases with audio in a blog post I have. I'll link that down below. It has all kinds of polite French words so you can practice. All right, number 6, wearing sweatpants or workout attire just out and about when not working out. Now, I want to say there's a difference here between ratty old sweatpants and sneakers and a chic, well put together athleisure outfit. I just want to say that off the bat. You'll definitely see French women wearing cute joggers, trendy sneakers, casual wear. But you won't see too many people out in actual athletic wear in public, going out for lunch after their gym session, still donning their sweaty gym clothes. You're not going to really see that. A quick errand on the way home, sure, but wearing like your old ratty gym clothes or even nice gym clothes, leggings, t-shirt, sports bra, for the whole day, it's a bit more rare here, I'd say, than most areas in the US. Gym clothes are generally reserved for the actual gym or workout session in France. And if you want to know more about what to wear in France as a tourist, I wrote a no BS guide on what to wear in France. You want to definitely check out as well. Again, on the blog linked below. All right, number 7, wearing overly flashy clothes. Now, if you spend time in France, you probably have noticed that French style overall, it tends to be a little understated. So if you want to fit in, definitely leave your overly flashy, colorful, revealing clothes at home. Again, not that you can never wear these things, you do you, but as a tourist, you probably want to be comfortable. So think about walkable shoes, not these like sky-high stiletto heels. Don't wear all your jewelry. That's just going to make you a target. This is an important tip because not only is it practical, but it's from a safety standpoint as well. All right, number 8, this one people argue about, but I would say that leaving a large tip at a French restaurant is going to get you some looks. Of course, it'll be welcomed by the server, but it is unusual to tip 20% or more at a French restaurant. Tips, like I said, they are appreciated, but they aren't compulsory here. Definitely not to the 20% level. So many French people, I will say, they don't tip at all, and that's not considered rude. You're not considered to be stiffing the waiter if you don't pay anything extra. What I personally do, what I recommend is if you're getting something small at a cafe, let's say coffee, something like that, you can round up. So if your bill is $4.20, leave $5. That's more than fine. And I would say for a casual meal, it's totally normal to leave a few extra euros. Leave 20 for a bill that's 18. But to leave 20% or more, the vast majority of French people do not regularly leave that sort of tip. That would be seen as unusual. Now, do keep in mind that being a waiter in France, it's considered a profession. It's not something that most people would do, as a job as a student or just for extra pocket money. It's a profession. That's not to say that they won't provide good service. It's just that waiters in France, they're not trying to serve you in that certain way in the hopes of getting a big tip. Waiters aren't going to say, "Hi, I'm Diane. I'm here to take care of you today." You're not going to know their names, and they're not going to check on you multiple times throughout your meal and keep refilling your water. They do their job appropriately, what's normal for French culture, and they get paid a salary for that. It's certainly not a well-paid job. No waiters are going to be rich, but it's a job, and waiters have a work contract, and they are compensated for that work. Now, all that said, for excellent service, feel free to do what you feel is appropriate for the situation. If you've had an amazing meal, I personally have a food allergy, so if they really took good care of me, I will leave a little bit more of a tip. But just feel out the situation and know that 20% would be quite unusual. All right, number 9, not knowing how to drive a stick shift, a manual transmission. Most vehicles in France, they do have a stick shift manual transmission, and that's what most people learn to drive on. You will find automatic cars, but they're definitely less common here than they are in the US. All right, number 10, hugging someone to say hello. You could definitely learn from my mistakes here. Make sure you do une bise, a cheek kiss. There's usually 2. Some regions do more. Definitely don't go in for that big American hug. when greeting your new French friends or family in France. And they definitely do, they faire la bise, cheek kisses. They don't wrap their arms around each other to say hello. All right, number 11, eating outside at mealtimes, say like dinner before 7 p.m. or a late lunch at 3. The French are definitely more strict with mealtimes than we are in the US. And I would say outside of big cities, it's going to be more difficult to find restaurants that are open all day long, where you can stop in for a quick bite, like I said, a late lunch at 3 p.m. So aside from fast food and especially touristy areas, again, in big cities, what we call the service continu, all-day service, it's not the norm. They have set meal hours that generally run from like noon to 2:30 for lunch and maybe like 7 to 10-ish for dinner. And being seated outside those times, it's not common. And if you invite people over for a dinner party, 7:30 I would say would be okay, 8 o'clock, but anything earlier would definitely be a bit unusual, except if you're doing an apéro dînatoire, but that's a whole other video. Now for some context, there's something important I do want to mention. As a visitor in France, you are not expected to know French and everything about the country. Absolutely not. It is normal and completely okay if you don't do everything like the French do. You're not French, and it's impossible to know every social norm out there. I get that. But I do feel that we could do a little bit. We could do our part a little bit, and I feel that knowledge is certainly power, and it comes down to basically it being a matter of respect. I feel like if we can educate ourselves as tourists about a country and its culture, I feel like that's the best way to go. And the bottom line is you can do whatever you want. They're not super serious matters of life and death. You're not breaking the law. No culture police are going to jump out at you from behind one of these bushes. You know, nothing's going to happen to you if you don't respect these norms as a tourist. And some of you watching, you might not care at all what the French think. I get that as well. So in that case, you do you. But that said, if you want to understand French culture at least a little bit and try to fit in a little bit, I hope this video was helpful to some extent. You know, like I said, these things I mentioned, they're not generally done in France. Americans are not the only ones who might do these things. I also want to make it clear, I'm not saying that you will never find any French person ever doing the things I talked about here. I want to be clear about that as well. They're just done much less often here in France than the US. And my point here in this video, it was to provide a bit of cultural education, a lot of what I do on this channel, on just what the norms are in France, just so you're aware and can adapt if you care to, and just kind of explain what types of things would be socially acceptable and what would stand out and maybe be perceived as unusual at the very least, or maybe even rude in some cases. So it's just all about better preparing you for your trip and being a respectful tourist. So yeah. Thank you for watching. And if you like my video, I have an ebook on France tips first-time travelers need to know. I'll link it here. It's called 75 Beginner France Travel Tips for a Standout Trip. I'll either link it here or down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you right here on We in France soon. Salut!